You ever get that weird feeling? The one where your brain just refuses to let go of something you haven't finished. It's like an itch you can't scratch. Well, turns out it's a real thing, and the reason why is a super fascinating quirk in our psychology. So, let's dive in. Think about it for a second. You can probably remember, in perfect detail, the last scene of that show you binged last month. The one where the main character was in some crazy, impossible situation. That memory's probably crystal clear, right? And yet, what did you have for breakfast today? Seriously, for a lot of us, that memory is fuzzy at best. So, what is going on here? Why does our brain cling so tightly to one thing, but just lets the other one float away? Well, the answer is this powerful psychological principle. It's a kind of glitch in our mental wiring that explains this whole selective memory thing. And trust me, once you see it, you are going to start seeing it absolutely everywhere. And our story starts, of all places, in a super busy cafe, almost 100 years ago, with one very, very observant psychologist. So meet Bluma Zeigarnik. Back in the 1920s, she was a student at the University of Berlin. And she and her professor made this simple but kind of profound observation in a place you would never expect to find a scientific breakthrough. They were sitting in this cafe and they noticed that the waiters had these incredible memories. They could juggle super complex orders, multiple dishes, drinks for huge tables, all without writing a single thing down. It was amazing. But then the second the bill was paid, poof, it was gone. They couldn't recall a thing about the order. This little mystery is what sparked a brilliant experiment. So, Zeigarnik took this idea from the cafe right into the lab. Here's what she did. She gave people a bunch of simple tasks to do. Things like puzzles, stringing beads, stuff like that. But here was the trick. She would interrupt them about halfway through half of the tasks, so they couldn't finish them. Then, a little later, she just asked them, "Hey, can you remember all the things you worked on?" And the results were, well, they were stunning. People remembered the unfinished, interrupted tasks almost twice as well as the ones they actually got to complete. And this wasn't just a small difference, it was a huge, undeniable pattern. Something was definitely going on. So what is the mechanism here? Why does unfinished business stick in our heads so powerfully? Well, the answer has to do with something that psychologists like to call an open loop. And this whole phenomenon was named after her. It's called the Zeigarnik Effect, and it's basically this. Our brains have this powerful built-in tendency to remember tasks that are still in progress and to forget the ones that are all done. Zeigarnik figured that when you start a task, you create this kind of task-specific tension in your brain. A really good way to think about it is like opening a new tab on your computer browser. It just stays open, right? It's using up a little bit of mental RAM, constantly reminding you that it's there and it needs to be dealt with. And here's where you can really see it in action. So an unfinished task, that's your open loop. That little bit of psychic tension keeps it right there at the front of your mind, kind of nagging you. But the moment you finish it, the loop closes, the tension is released, and your brain gets the signal, okay, cool, we're done here. We can delete this file and free up some space. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. What if we could take this weird brain quirk from being just a subconscious annoyance and turn it into a deliberate tool? Well, it turns out you can actually use this effect to make yourself more productive, more creative, and believe it or not, even less stressed. We all know that feeling, right? You're staring at some huge, daunting project, and the hardest part is just getting started. Well, the Zeigarnik Effect gives us the perfect life hack. Just start. Seriously, open the document, write one sentence, do one tiny little thing. By just starting, you create that open loop, and your brain's natural desire for closure will gently but persistently pull you back to finish the job later. And it's not just for fighting procrastination. It can actually boost creativity. The author Ernest Hemingway famously did this. He would always stop his writing for the day right in the middle of a sentence. Why would he do that? Because it forced an open loop. His subconscious mind would keep chewing on the story overnight, and when he came back to his desk the next morning, it was super easy to jump back in. All he had to do was finish the sentence, and bam, the momentum was back. But okay, what about the downside? When you have way too many of these mental tabs open at once, it's completely overwhelming, right? Super stressful. Well, the solution is surprisingly simple. Just make a plan. The simple act of writing down exactly when, where, and how you're going to finish a task tricks your brain. It sends a signal that says, hey, this is handled. It might not be done yet, but there's a plan. And that's often enough to let the cognitive loop close, releasing that tension and freeing up your focus. So now that we know how to use this effect for ourselves, let's flip the script and look at how it is being used on us every single day. Just think about your daily life for a second. Where do you feel that irresistible pull to see what happens next, to finish some process, or to complete something you barely even remember starting? Oh yeah, it is literally everywhere. That TV show cliffhanger, that's a massive open loop designed to make you slam that next episode button. Those app notifications telling you to complete your profile, that's the Zeigarnik Effect. Progress bars that show you're so close to being done, all of it leverages that mental tension to make you finish. And this isn't an accident, it's by design. A lot of apps are built on this. They create a task for you, they use a trigger, like a push notification, to remind you of that nagging open loop, and then they give you a little reward when you finish. That tiny hit of satisfaction from closing the loop makes you way more likely to start the next task. And it keeps you hooked in this cycle. And this is where we really have to be mindful, because there is such a fine line here. On one hand, a fitness app that uses this to motivate you to close your rings can be genuinely helpful, right? But on the other hand, the exact same psychological principle can be used to create compulsive loops that keep you scrolling on an app for hours. The technique is the same. The only difference is the intent behind it. The psychologist William James really hit the nail on the head here, long before Zeigarnik even did her experiments. That mental weight, that feeling of being drained, that's the fatigue of having too many cognitive loops open at once. So now you know. You know the secret of unfinished business. You know why it feels so compelling, how you can use it to your advantage, and, just as important, how to spot when it's being used on you. So the only real question left is, what are you going to do with it? Which loops will you choose to open, and which ones will you decide to close?